We were told that if we checked all the boxes, the degree, the career, the house, we'd finally feel like we made it. But for most of us, checking those boxes hasn't led to freedom. It's just led to a more expensive version of exhaustion. Why does the American dream feel like a treadmill that only goes faster the harder you run? Let's sit with that for a second. Because that question isn't abstract. That's the person making $72,000 a year who still can't figure out where the money goes. That's the couple who got the raise they've been asking for, and somehow, 6 months later, still feels just as tight as before. That's the single parent in a mid-sized city who does everything right, works the overtime, skips the vacations, watches the budget spreadsheet every Sunday night, and still wakes up at 3 a.m. thinking about the water heater that's starting to make that noise. That's who this video is about. My name is Ely, and I spend way too much time thinking about how people in the US experience money psychologically. If you're someone who earns a normal income, maybe even more than you used to, but still doesn't feel financially secure, hit subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Not because it helps the algorithm, but because it tells me you're the kind of person who wants to understand what's actually happening, not just hear another cut the lattes speech. Here's the thing. The conversation about money in America is almost always framed as a math problem. Earn more, spend less, invest the difference. And look, the math matters. But if math alone fixed this, we wouldn't have a country where, according to the Federal Reserve's 2023 report on the economic well-being of U.S. households, 37% of adults say they couldn't cover an unexpected $400 expense with cash. Not 37% of low-income adults. 37% of adults across the board. People with jobs. People with 401(k)s. People who, on paper, are doing okay. So clearly something is happening beyond the numbers. Here's what most people don't realize. Financial stress in America today is less about income level and more about the gap between what you earn and what your life actually costs. And, crucially, what you feel it's supposed to cost. That gap is where anxiety lives. And that gap has been quietly widening for decades in ways that the traditional money conversation almost never addresses. Let's start with the math, because it sets up everything else. In 1980, the median household income in the United States was roughly $21,000. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $77,000 in today's dollars. The actual median household income today sits around $74,500, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. So in real purchasing power terms, the median American household is actually earning slightly less than their counterparts did 40 years ago. Let that land for a moment. Wages, when adjusted for inflation, have barely moved for the average worker over 4 decades. But here's where it gets interesting. The cost of the things that actually matter, the things that define stability in America, hasn't stayed flat. It's exploded. Healthcare costs have risen over 600% since 1980, far outpacing general inflation. College tuition at a 4-year public university has increased by more than 200% in real terms over the same period. Housing in major metro areas has become almost mathematically inaccessible for median income earners. A typical home in a city like Austin, Denver, or Nashville now costs 6, 7, even 8 times the median local income. The traditional rule of thumb was that you shouldn't spend more than 3 times your annual income on a home. That rule is now basically a museum piece. And childcare, if you have kids, can cost more than in-state college tuition in many parts of the country. In Massachusetts, the average annual cost of infant care in a daycare center exceeds $20,000. In California, it's even higher. This isn't a lifestyle choice. This is a baseline cost of being a working parent. So when someone earning $65,000 a year says they feel broke, they're not being dramatic. They might literally be experiencing what economists call cost burden, where the core expenses of a normal American life consume so much income that there's almost nothing left over for actual financial progress. And yet the cultural narrative is still pointing its finger at that person and saying, you just need to budget better. Now you might be thinking, okay, but plenty of people earn more than $65,000 and still feel this way. What's their excuse? And this is where the psychology really takes over, because it is not just about the numbers. Meet someone like Marcus. Marcus is 34, lives in a mid-sized southern city, makes $89,000 a year working in logistics management. By almost any standard definition, Marcus is doing well. He's in the top third of U.S. earners. He has a car payment, a mortgage on a modest home, a kid in elementary school, and his wife works part-time. On paper, this family should be fine. But Marcus checks his bank account every other day with a low-grade dread that he can't fully explain. He's not in debt spiraling out of control. He's not making terrible decisions. He just never feels like there's enough. And he can't figure out why. Here's the thing about Marcus. His problem isn't his income. His problem is something researchers call financial anxiety disorder. And it operates almost identically to generalized anxiety, except it's triggered specifically by money cues. The American Psychological Association consistently finds in its annual Stress in America surveys that money is the #1 source of significant stress for Americans, surpassing work, relationships, and health. And importantly, this stress doesn't resolve automatically when income increases. There's a concept in behavioral economics called the hedonic treadmill. The idea is simple but devastating. Human beings are remarkably good at adapting to new circumstances. A raise that feels incredible in November becomes the new normal by March. The house that felt luxurious when you moved in becomes fine within 2 years. The car you saved up for starts to feel ordinary after 6 months. And so the psychological benefit of improving your financial situation diminishes much faster than the actual financial cost of maintaining it. This is why people who get promotions often feel temporary relief, and then the anxiety creeps back. Because lifestyle adjusts to income almost automatically. The spending doesn't just match income, it races to match it. The nice restaurant becomes the regular restaurant. The occasional weekend trip becomes an expected annual vacation. The slightly nicer apartment becomes a need rather than a luxury. None of these individual decisions are wrong. But collectively, they trap you on a track where financial progress is invisible because the bar keeps rising at the same speed as your earnings. Now look, this isn't just individual weakness or bad discipline. This is a deeply social phenomenon. And in the United States, it's supercharged by something that's very specific to American culture: the almost complete absence of visible class markers that tell you where you're allowed to spend. In many other developed countries, there are strong cultural norms around modesty, around not visibly displaying wealth even when you have it. America is almost the exact opposite. American culture has, for over a century, incentivized the visible performance of economic success. Your car, your neighborhood, your kids' school, your vacations, your clothes, your gym. These are all read as signals of status, competence, and worth. And when everyone around you is performing their best economic self on Instagram, at the office, at the school pickup, the pressure to match that performance is genuinely relentless. Psychologists call this social comparison theory, developed by Leon Festinger in 1954. The basic idea is that humans naturally evaluate their own social and economic standing by comparing themselves to others. And in an era of social media, we're comparing ourselves to a curated highlight reel of thousands of people simultaneously. The result is a constant, low-level signal that you are behind, that everyone else is further along, that what you have is almost enough, but not quite. Here's what most people don't realize about that feeling. It's not a flaw in your character. It is a predictable psychological response to a set of environmental conditions that have been optimized, often quite deliberately, to make you feel exactly that way. The advertising industry alone spends roughly $360 billion per year in the United States, making sure you feel a quiet dissatisfaction with your current situation. That dissatisfaction is the entire business model. So the question becomes, if the math is harder than it used to be, and the psychology is working against you, and the culture is making it worse, what do you actually do about it? Here's where it gets practical. The first thing, and this sounds almost embarrassingly simple, but stay with it, is to stop measuring progress against external benchmarks and start measuring it against your own defined targets. Most people have no clear number that represents enough. They have a vague feeling that they should have more. More savings, more income, more security. But more is a direction, not a destination. You can walk in a direction forever without ever arriving anywhere. What does enough actually look like for you in your specific city, with your specific kids, with your specific health situation? Not your coworker's version, not your college roommate's version. Yours. What is the specific number in a savings account that would make you sleep better? What is the specific monthly cash flow that would make you feel stable? Get concrete. Because psychological research consistently shows that vague goals generate vague progress and maximum anxiety, while specific goals, even difficult ones, generate clarity and reduce stress, regardless of how close you are to hitting them. The second piece is understanding the difference between structural financial stress and behavioral financial stress. Structural stress is when your cost of living genuinely exceeds your income in ways that no amount of budgeting will fix without a major income change. If you're paying $2,200 a month in rent on a $45,000 salary in a high-cost city, that is a structural problem. No budgeting app is going to close that gap. The solution is structural: a different job, a different city, a different housing arrangement, additional income sources. Behavioral financial stress, on the other hand, is when the income is technically sufficient but the spending patterns have expanded to absorb it entirely. The reason this distinction matters so much is that the solutions are almost completely different. Treating a structural problem with behavioral solutions, willpower, apps, accountability partners, is like bailing out a boat with a bucket while ignoring the hole. And treating a behavioral problem like a structural one, always assuming you just need to earn more, means you can earn $120,000 and still feel like you're drowning. Now you might be thinking, how do I know which one I have? Here's a rough test. Take your after-tax monthly income. Subtract your fixed, non-negotiable expenses: housing, transportation, minimum debt payments, utilities, insurance. What's left? If what's left is less than 20% of your take-home income, you're likely in structural territory, and the primary work is increasing income or decreasing fixed costs dramatically. If what's left is closer to 30%, 35%, or more, and you're still feeling broke at the end of the month, the issue is predominantly behavioral, which is actually the more solvable of the two problems in the short term. Here's the third insight, and it might be the most counterintuitive one. Saving money, psychologically, is not primarily about discipline. It is about identity. Research out of behavioral economics, including work by Wendy Wood at USC on habit formation, consistently shows that sustained behavior change doesn't happen through willpower. It happens through identity shift. The people who consistently save money don't white-knuckle their way through every financial decision. They've internalized a self-concept in which saving is just what they do. It becomes less of a moral victory and more of a default behavior. What this means practically is that the goal isn't to force yourself to save $300 this month through gritted teeth discipline. The goal is to gradually rebuild the story you tell yourself about what kind of person you are with money. That story shift doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen through small, consistent, non-dramatic behaviors done repeatedly over time. Automating a $50 transfer to savings the day after your paycheck lands. Every time, without exception. Not because $50 changes your financial life tomorrow, but because every time that transfer happens, your brain logs another data point that says, I am someone who puts money aside. I do this. This is who I am. That identity, built brick by brick, is what eventually produces real financial resilience. Not the $50 itself. The $50 is just evidence. The fourth thing, and this is the one that most people resist most aggressively, is confronting the lifestyle gap honestly. Not with shame, just with honesty. Because lifestyle inflation is invisible from the inside. It doesn't feel like a series of decisions. It feels like a series of upgrades that just naturally happened as life improved. But each upgrade has a carrying cost. And when you add them up, they often account for the entire gap between where your income is and where your savings rate should be. A car payment of $650 a month is about $7,800 a year. Over 4 years, that's $31,200, before insurance, before maintenance. A nice apartment that's $400 more than you need to spend is $4,800 a year. A restaurant and food delivery habit at $800 a month versus $400 a month is another $4,800 a year. None of those feel like big decisions in isolation. Together, they represent nearly $20,000 a year in carrying costs. And at a $75,000 income with taxes, $20,000 a year is the difference between building wealth and running in place. This is not a lecture about deprivation. Spend on what genuinely matters to you and brings real value to your life. But the research on hedonic adaptation tells us that most of us spend the majority of our discretionary money on things that stop generating real happiness within 6 months of acquiring them. The question isn't whether you can afford it. The question is whether it still brings you the value you're paying for. Most of the time, when people actually stop and ask that question, the honest answer surprises them. And here's the thing that ties all of this together. The American dream, as it was sold to us, was always partly a product, a marketing concept. Buy the house in the suburbs, fill it with appliances and cars and college-bound children, and you've made it. The problem isn't that people bought into that dream. The problem is that the dream was designed to always be just slightly out of reach. Always one more purchase, one more upgrade, one more milestone away from satisfaction. That's not a coincidence. That's a feature. Real financial security, the kind that actually makes you feel okay, doesn't look like a bigger house or a better car. It looks like options. The option to leave a job that's making you miserable without financial catastrophe. The option to take a month off when your parent gets sick. The option to say no to the weekend trip you don't want to go on without having to do the mental math. That kind of security is built not by earning more, but by consistently spending less than you earn and doing it for long enough that the gap accumulates into something meaningful. The treadmill doesn't slow down on its own. But here's what's true. You can choose to step off of it. Not by earning less or living worse. By deciding, consciously, deliberately, that the version of your life that doesn't require you to perform your success is worth more than the version that does. That's not a financial decision. That's a values decision. But it has enormous financial consequences. This is the beginning of a different relationship with money. Not perfect, not dramatic, not overnight, just different. And honestly, different is enough to start.